In about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Quiet all by itself. Amazing. We just have a few more people trickling in, so we're going to wait a minute. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Stuart Wong. I'm Vice President of Communications, Marketing, and Advocacy, and I want to welcome you all in hurricane-like conditions to Holland Bloorview's Lunch and Learn. Dear everybody, talking about stigma. And our reason for being here today is because we've launched Dear Everybody. It's a fantastic campaign that is now in the market, and it's Holland Bloorview's social justice campaign to advance and eliminate stigma against children living with disabilities. And you may have seen it. We have a large display in the cafeteria. We're at the Eaton Center. You probably have seen some ads and some of the media. We're really excited about it, and it's fully aligned with our No Boundaries strategy and our goal of advancing and leading, modeling social change. I'm going to keep my remarks actually pretty brief today because we've got a very distinguished panel today, and we're going to bring disability stigma out of the shadows and into the light. And at the end of this, we hope that you'll take this model of what you're seeing today and extend it with your family, with your friends, with your networks, and just have a conversation, because that's where that's where change starts, by having a conversation, a change of attitudes, leading to action, and then through that we can have a world where inclusion, disability, and equality and equity are all part of what we do. So I hope you enjoy the day. And I should say that this conversation is born from you. As we finished up and completed year one of Dear Everybody last year, we engaged in conversations with you and with other stakeholders to understand what would make it even better. How do we create the kind of impact, the comprehensiveness that we want to create? And through these conversations, we heard from you that we need a space. We need a space where we can have these conversations. We need a space to understand what stigma actually means in real terms, and also understand the ways that we can change it. And I think, as you'll hear today, there's a lot of gray zones when we talk about stigma. There's no right or wrong. It's not black and white. There's that kind of space in between, and we're going to explore that space today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Louise Kinross. She's editor of Bloom, and she's going to be our guide for the day, and she's going to help us introduce our distinguished panel. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to go right into the panel and have each person give a quick description of themselves, maybe starting with Joanne.
I'm Joanne Downing. I'm a family leader, and I am the mother of Matthew, who's 18 and transitioning out of Holland Bloorview.
I'm Matthias. I'm a former patient here at Bloorview. I also did a couple of things here. I worked in the teen lounge for a little bit, did the youth feedback corner with Robin and Elaine and the rest of the communications team, and I also worked as a youth mentor at the Independence Program and Youth at Work over the summer.
My name is Beth. And I'm a family leader. I also just started in a role as a family partnership specialist in the Family Resource Center. I have a daughter who's 7. Her name is Abby. She has a communication disability and a language disorder. And yeah, she's a client here, and she also went to Bloorview School.
My name is Carolyn, and I am a staff member. I'm a registered nurse who has worked up on the inpatient units, and I'm currently in the day patient program on the main floor.
Okay, and my name is Chantel. I'm a youth leader at Holland Bloorview. I was a former inpatient here 7 years ago, and right now I'm just completing my studies at the University of Toronto.
And there's a wonderful interview on Bloom with Chantal, so check it out afterwards. So I guess, yeah, that would be great if you could turn I just wanted to share this with you. Many of you have probably seen this because it was all over social media, but Teen Vogue did a piece about how models with disabilities are just starting to break into that field. And this is Jillian Mercado, who has had a lot of success. But I found this story interesting because it was written by Kia Brown, who we interviewed in Bloom, who has a disability, and she talks a bit at the beginning about the stigma that she faces, and I thought I would just read this quote, and it would kind of set the tone for what we're talking about. She says, "I am 26 years old, and I have cerebral palsy. I am also a writer, journalist, activist, and I travel around the world speaking about disability and representation. But my humanity can sometimes take a back seat to the eyes of strangers who are often either agitated by my mere presence or feel entitled to answers about my disability. I experience this every time I enter public spaces. The eyes on me are unforgiving, some people even going as far as making snide remarks when I pass by." So I thought that might just kind of set the tone for what we're talking about. And now I have my wonderful questions. And my first question is going to Matthias. What kind of stigma have you faced?
Great. Good, I got options. Oh, and I also have my yogurt. So if Yoke wants to sponsor me, I'm okay with it. I have to make that joke, sorry. Anyways, back to the question at hand. So some of the stigma that I face is more along the lines of like people doubting me. So it was like, oh, like, are you sure you can go ahead and do that? Like, are you okay to like go to gym class with the rest of the kids? And it's always like, well, yeah, like I'm fine, like I'm good. So just actually maybe if I can give like a little example. Sure. Like I used to do sports as a kid. So in high school I ran track for 4 years. So when I joined the track team, the first thing I had someone tell me was, you know, why did you join the track team? Like, why do you have to run? Like, it's not necessary. You don't have to do a sports to enjoy high school. And I was thinking, like, this really bothered me because it was like, well, if I didn't have what I have, I wouldn't be dealing with these questions. And I was also told, you know, if you get injured, you're going to have to, like, walk away from running. If your foot hurts, you're not going to be able to run. And I was getting all these questions, and I kept thinking to myself, like, all right, if I didn't have what I have, if I didn't have CP, I wouldn't be getting these questions. And even like kind of when I show people that I'm capable of doing something, there's always that, are you okay to do it? Like there's still that little bit of doubt that people have sometimes. Like it's even like along the lines of just when I started to drive, it's like, oh, you can drive? Do you use any modifications when you drive? And it's like, no, I don't use any modifications. Like I'm good. But it was more along those lines, and like sometimes it's not meant like maliciously or anything bad. It's just people are more concerned and they just don't know. They might just not have the knowledge about it.
And so it sounds like you're always being second guessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Thank you. Joanne, now I have to put my glasses on. What does stigma look like for Maddie and your family?
For our family, a lot of people forget that we have to make accommodations for Matthew. He's physically disabled, and it's not always easy for us to access places, for us to attend certain things. We have to plan. Everything has to be well planned before we go anywhere. And people kind of forget. They're like, oh, well, you can just go down and do this, and why don't you just come here? Just bring him along. And it's like, okay, well, yes, he's 120 pounds and he's got his wheelchair, and can I get in there? Is there steps? Oh yeah, it's no problem. There's only a couple steps. It's fine. People forget that it's a challenge, and it's good that they forget about his disability in that, oh, you can just bring him everywhere. But it's forgetting about how it affects all of us. When my children were much younger, they used to get a little bit upset because we couldn't go on holidays all the time like all their friends. And I said to them, but your doors have been opened up by so many things that Matthew has had access to, like the skating with the Leafs, like the, going to Bloorview, meeting these other people. you learn, and your lives are much more enriched in other ways, and you're better people because of it. So I think that looking at things in a different way is good.
So that's interesting because you're talking about the barriers that you face just in participating in everyday activities, but the way that Kia Brown was speaking about stigma, she was talking about the way people observe her, and I'm wondering if you ever experienced that with Maddie.
Well, I've always taken Matthew everywhere with us, and when people do want to ask a question, I will answer them on it. Matthew's nonverbal, so he can't answer for himself. But people are drawn to Matthew because he's a very happy boy, and he's very, it's a contagious type of personality he has. So I know that he's never alone. Like, people always want to come to him. It's usually their parents who are a little bit more reluctant to kind of draw up to him. I think that for Matthew, he sees things very simply. So he doesn't, and it's not because he's a simple child. It's more just because he takes everything, as we said, very much as it comes today, right now in the present, and he doesn't worry about things. So he doesn't care whether or not the car's broken down and we have to figure another way to get him to school or something like that. Those are not his concerns. His concerns are, this is what I'm doing today. Let's go.
Thank you. Chantal, as someone with an invisible disability, in what ways have you felt devalued or judged?
So with my disability, I have an acquired brain injury. So I often find that people question if I do have a disability, especially when I'm trying to get accommodations or advocate for myself. I find that sometimes I do have to validate my disability and the things that I need to be successful. So I've felt devalued because I've had a lot of people tell me that when they do finally find out about the fact that I have a disability, they've often told me that I won't be able to do things, or I won't, like, for example, I'm in school and I've been told that I might not be able to find a job in the future, or I might not be able to carry a job in the future. So just having people tell me that I'm not able to do things when they don't really know who I am.
Thank you. I'm wondering, this is directed to anyone on the panel. Can anyone give us an example of a time you felt stigmatized by someone's actions, even though nothing was said? Anyone?
So my daughter, Abby, I advocate for Abby, and something that happened to us once, we were involved in an extracurricular activity, and it was a group of kids, and everybody was playing a game, and the person in charge of the game and the group of kids happened to actually be a special education teacher. And so without saying anything, or the leader explained the rules for the game really quickly, and then everybody started to play the game. And I asked if the leader could stop and re-explain the rules, because they were really difficult for Abby to understand. And she would understand the rules, but just needed a little bit of help. And the response to me was that, well, she just wants to run around and play. She doesn't really need to know how to play the game. So I guess actually the person did say something, actually, so I take that back. So yeah, but right there shows you doubt. So an assumption that was made, and doubting her abilities, and that was really hurtful to me. Abby didn't notice what was happening, and I also couldn't believe that it was happening coming from somebody who worked in special education. So that's an example something that happened where just assumptions were made and it wasn't right.
If I can maybe like give, unless anybody else wants to add or something like that, but so like in elementary school, like they would take us like on like the skiing trip, like that was kind of like the really fun like yearly winter activity, probably like the only thing you can really do during the winter, except sitting inside. But like so like they give us like a little crash course on how to like stop, how to turn. So like the first time I went downhill skiing, I was probably like maybe like 10 years old. And like they gave us just like this really quick crash course. Yeah, you got to do like the pizza, and this is how you turn. And I'm thinking in my head like, what is this guy talking about? The pizza with your skis? I have no idea. So inevitably, everybody else gets to make the hill except me and a few others. And I felt like super stigmatized, like just me myself, because I kept thinking again, if I didn't have what I have, like I'd be on the hill, I'd be flying down, you know. So like I felt really down on myself because I felt like if the instructor maybe gave like a little bit more time towards me, then I probably would have been like better off. I would have been able to kind of make the hill like just like all my other friends did. So I felt like really like crappy. Like, that's a bad word. Sorry. I felt really bad about myself. Like I just felt like absolutely like I was crying like in lunchtime because I was like, I'm the only one that didn't make it. Everybody else, all my friends are on the hill except me. And if like I was so frustrated. So eventually, like a couple of friends of mine, like they came on and they're like, "Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Like, come with us on this hill." So that kind of like made me feel a little bit better, and then I got a little bit more practice and I got a little bit better. And then the following year, I had an instructor who actually pulled me aside and then really taught me how to do the pizza, which I don't know why they explain it like that, but whatever. But like the following year, I had an instructor who actually pulled me aside and like actually taught me how to do it. So that year, I was able to kind of make it. And then I went skiing a few more times and I was able to do it. Haven't gone skiing since. It's crazy. But the point is like I definitely felt stigmatized because even though maybe like the instructor was not aware of my circumstances and having a disability, like it really sucked for me because I couldn't be with the rest of my classmates. Yeah, that was it.
Thank you. That's actually what I was thinking about. I was thinking about times when children or youth are excluded in different ways. My next question was, what about a time when someone said something shocking? So I'm wondering if anyone has had that kind of experience. And if you haven't, I have.
This story, like, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to, like, it was a story that I heard, and it was revolved around a student who was, like, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and then the teacher went up to the student's parents and said, yeah, I think your son's got autism, simply because he had a little bit of misbehavior during class. And then when I heard this story, it was really made me upset, because it's like, for one thing, okay, like, you're not a psychologist, you shouldn't be diagnosing you shouldn't be diagnosing students, because you don't have the education to do that. And second, you're labeling that student simply because of a few misbehaviors without understanding the full context of why he may be misbehaving. And that just really, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't be, and nobody should be stigmatizing or labeling a student or anybody simply because of few behaviors that they have. So I think like when eventually I calmed down a little bit about it, and I realized, okay, like maybe the teacher needs just a little bit more education about autism itself, about disability itself, before anybody should start kind of labeling and trying to diagnose a student or anybody. So like when I heard that, I was just like, just relax, like calm down. Like I think people need to just realize, like, I feel like they hear like these buzzwords surrounding disability and they get like all worked up. And it's just a matter of just saying, like, don't sweat it, like relax. Like everybody has their own kind of quirks and they just need to be embraced, really.
Thank you. I guess I'm wondering about a time that you may have been with friends or family or I don't know, never before met people, having a conversation and someone referred to disability in a very derogatory way. Has anyone experienced that?
Well, I guess my children's elementary school had a DD classroom, and there were a number of students in there. And hearing children saying things like, oh, that's so-and-so, he's the dummy, and we don't want to play with him. And, kids can be really cruel, but you actually have to stop them and say, well, I think what the principal did in this case was she tried to educate the school about this class. And she ended up getting them to embrace this class and to mentor this class. So much so that every single child in that class became a member of a team. And that was based on the children voting these kids into their team. They may not have been the best basketball player or whatever, but it made those students feel a part of things. And by hearing the negative, realizing that we have to re-educate from the beginning and teach people that that's not the correct way to view somebody, that in fact they're your peers and they can be your friends, and you should be their friends, because there's nothing different from Matthias and I, or it's just that we are working together.
Thank you. I guess I'm wondering about a time when maybe you didn't speak up, because I think that there's sometimes when we can be in a social situation and someone says something and we're kind of torn as to whether we speak up or not. And so I'm interested in knowing if anyone has experienced that.
I think there's been many times where I haven't necessarily spoken up. And I think the reason why sometimes I might not speak up is just when I feel like I just don't have enough energy to explain to someone why I need things or why I am the way I am. Sometimes I might feel like I shouldn't have to explain it to anyone. I feel like if I am giving them or telling them that I need certain supports, and I'm telling them generally the reason why, I don't really need to go into much detail. So an example of that is I can remember when I was in high school after my brain injury. So when I was in high school after my brain injury, my processing speed was reduced, so I would get extra time for my exams. And I would have many peers that would come up to me and say, well, why do you get extra time? You're still doing well in school. Like, it's not fair that you get extra time. And to me, I know why I get extra time, and I do think it's fair why I get extra time, but I didn't really feel like explaining it to people because I feel like they wouldn't really understand it. It's not that I didn't explain it to them because they don't understand. I didn't explain it because I felt like they didn't care to understand. So sometimes in certain situations, it's not just about you asking the question or you making the statement, but it's also about how you ask it.
Did anyone else want to share an experience where something shocking was shared? I have like a quick experience I'll share, and then I'll be quiet. I was at the chiropractor, and I was having an adjustment, and this person is someone that I have known over a number of years, is a very caring, very dedicated person. And all of a sudden, and we went to the same university, and so like I know him quite relatively well. And all of a sudden in the conversation, he was talking about something that he found to be outrageous. And he said that was so retarded. And I was absolutely beyond shocked. Like, I was literally lying there just going, I can't believe that he just said that. And then in my mind, I was going through the scenarios of what would happen if I told him that that I didn't appreciate him using that word, and that I have a son with an intellectual disability. And then I was thinking about, this person I don't think has had a lot of experience with disability, and so I was kind of thinking, he may just really get his back up, and then, it may be hard for me to continue to receive treatment from him. So I actually didn't say anything, and it was a really, really horrible experience. So I guess I'm also interested in knowing about social media, because oftentimes on social media, people will use words people will talk about disability in a very derogatory way. So I'm wondering to the panel, are there times that you do respond or times that you don't respond, and why?
I think that's an interesting one. We were actually having a chat before we got started, kind of about these moments of when you do respond and when you don't respond. And sometimes it's difficult to respond when you have no idea who the other person on the other end of the conversation is, when you have no concept as to how they're going to take what you say, because the added layer to that is when you put something in print, it's the context of which it can be taken can be morphed and changed depending on how the person who's reading it is feeling, whether they've had a good day or a bad day. You have no idea what's going on in their life. So, a one-liner that could be very, very gentle could come across as like, a hammer to the wrist kind of thing. So we were talking about, there are moments when you find a little bit trapped in terms of not responding because you just have no idea how the person is going to take it, and then where do you go from there if you really get into it when you don't necessarily know that you have, and this is me personally, all of the resources to be able to go all the way down the rabbit hole, for lack of a better way of wording that. So I think it's more of a comment than it is kind of a response to that. It's an interesting catch that I sometimes find myself in is I'm not entirely sure, do I, don't I? If I know my audience or the person I'm speaking to even a little bit, I'll tend to get into it. If I don't, I tend to not.
Did anyone else want to share anything?
I think with regards to social media, my rule for myself about responding is when there's something factually wrong. And I don't obviously have all the facts, but I know what I know from my lived experience. And if I come across something that I know to be incorrect, then I'll respond if I can. But I think what you're saying is exactly right in terms of responding. Sometimes it has to be, you need the time, you have to have the energy, and it has to be, sometimes the stars have to align to be able to respond properly. There certainly have been times when I haven't responded, and there's a lot of times when I have responded. So, but I think even if I don't respond to something that isn't right, or when somebody says something incorrect, I think about it, and if I don't respond, I try to learn from it and then think about what I would do next time. And sometimes when people say things, it's shocking, like you were describing, Louise. It totally throws you back, and you can't respond right away. You're like I've had situations, I can't think of a specific example right now, but where somebody has said something or questioned my daughter's disability, where I've had to prove a disability, and I just don't have the words. I just don't have it at that moment. So I think about it after the fact, and then I know what I'll say next time.
Yeah, I think it's good to go into it thinking about maybe even role playing and practicing responses, or talking to other people, debriefing. If you have an experience like that, that can be helpful. Do all people with disabilities agree on what is stigmatizing and what is not? To the people who have disabilities.
So kind of like the way the approach I kind of see is that like kind of disability affects everybody a little bit differently. So kind of no two people with the same disability is going to have the same experiences and kind of and take the same outlook towards it. So kind of the ways that people are stigmatized or what they feel is stigmatized is definitely going to be different. So my experience with being stigma is going to be different from the person beside me, and so on. But I think, like, I'll give you an example. So when I was like, like when I was growing up as a kid, like I'll go, okay, I'm disabled. Like, and I used to stigmatize other people without even realizing, without even having like the education and knowledge about disability, unlike I do now. But like I remember going, like as a kid, going, okay, I'm disabled, but I'm like, I'm not that disabled. So even though I had a disability, I would inadvertently, without even realizing, be stigmatizing other people. And now that I look back on it, and now that I have the education and I work, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of here and work here and learn more, I realized that kind of what I was thinking back as a kid was completely inappropriate and wrong with because like we can't really be like just going, okay, well, it's not like that. Like you can't stick. It's just wrong to do. And I think it's a matter of just kind of just taking a step back and then kind of realizing and understanding and getting to know the person and understanding kind of how their disability impacts them and how they deal with the challenges that come along in their daily lives, which can be with anybody really.
That's actually a great answer, which leads into the next question. Does stigma exist within the disability community? Are some disabilities better than others? Because I think that from a parent perspective, when a parent has a child born with a disability, and sometimes when the effect of the disability isn't really known yet, you kind of feel like when you're presenting this information to people that you so don't want your child to be judged that you almost feel like you're kind of doing public relations for your child. And I think parents sometimes fall into maybe talking about how their child's disability at least isn't as bad as this disability. So it's kind of similar to what you were talking about. Because basically the stigma is within all of us, right? Like it's not, that's what I was thinking about coming to this panel today. It's not like we're in here and the stigma's out there. It's like we were all socialized to these stigmas. And I think it's also really interesting for us as an organization to look at how sometimes the way we communicate things may inadvertently imply that certain types of disabilities are better than others, or in the criteria that some of our programs have. I think it's changed a lot and it's a lot better than it was. But when I first came here, we really only ever referred to children with physical disabilities. And so for people whose children had other types of disabilities with their physical disability, I think they often felt quite excluded from that, and I think we've made a lot of ground there. But so I guess another question is, do you ever feel like you're not sure what language to use when talking about disability? And when I first came here 20 years ago, we only used people first language. So in communications, we only ever use people first language, and to ever refer to someone as disabled would be seen to be very offensive. But now many disability advocates say that they prefer what they call identity first language and that they want to be called disabled. And there was even a social media campaign called Say the Word Disabled. So I'm wondering if you ever feel in a quandary because you're not 100% sure what kind of language to use.
So actually, I took a couple like disability related classes in university, and one of the things that kind of struck out for me was the word crip. So when I hear the word crip or cripple, like I see it as really very derogatory, and I really it gives a really bad kind of taste in my mouth. But then kind of reading through some of the articles, what I read is that some people actually like who have a disability or disability like actually identify as cripple, and it's or crip or cripple, and it's a way of kind of them kind of empowering themselves and taking ownership of that word and kind of giving a new definition for it. But for me personally, like I've always kind of been like a little, especially now, like I try to be a little bit careful with the words that I use. So like in the past, like I used to work with an organization at a summer camp that dealt with individuals who have intellectual disabilities. So when I write like a cover letter or when I describe or when I write something about kind of a previous job that I've worked at, I'd always put it in quotation marks that I worked with individuals with intellectual disabilities, just because now like I'm a little bit more aware of, I personally just don't want to label somebody or label a group because I just think it's not right. I just don't like it. Like it's just, and I also kind of want to be a little bit more kind of open as well.
I have a question for Caroline. Have you ever had any uncomfortable situations when you were wearing your Dear Everybody shirt and and somebody asked you about it or asked you about the campaign?
Yes. So I was actually wearing this shirt. I had gone to the gym after work on a Friday after wearing this shirt and forgot my gym clothes. So I was like, well, I'm just going in my work clothes. And I was with my trainer, and I won't use their name because I forgot to ask. And partway through the workout, they looked at me and they were like, oh, what game do you play? I'm like, I'm on a machine doing something. I was like, what? What? She was like, well, what game do you play that not everybody can play? Didn't clue in that I was wearing my shirt. I'm doing something. I was like, she goes, your shirt. Right, my shirt. Oh, and then she said, oh, do I need to know something? And I was like, well, what? No. Yes. Like it was this really kind of flustering moment for me where I didn't realize what was being asked of me, and then I had no idea how to respond because I was really not prepared. And so kind of what came of it was, yes, there's something that we should talk about with regards to my shirt. This is in relation to our Dear Everybody campaign at work, and it's about stigma and disability. And we kind of got into a really neat conversation about the gym space itself, and was it accessible? And it was something they had never thought of before. They had never thought of. And I said, so if somebody came in who was using a wheelchair, what would you do? And they kind of looked around and they were like, well, they couldn't get here. It's up 3 flights of stairs. I was like, exactly. And this is what this is about. And as a staff member, I panicked, and I panicked my way through the entire conversation because I don't feel in any way, shape, or form that I'm an authority on this or I'm an expert on any of this at all. But I kind of, for me, what I took away from it and what I would hope to do with people in the future is I figured that it's okay to panic because it ended up being all right. And it was okay to say, I don't know, to questions that were being asked because I didn't know. And then I kind of thought that if what I could implant in somebody else that I'm having the conversation with is a little seed of, with regards to anything, then I'd kind of done a little bit of justice to our Dear Everybody campaign. So if the person that I'm talking with can walk away and just be wondering about our conversation and thinking about it a little bit more, then maybe it's a conversation that they may end up having with somebody down the road. It may be that, they're the person that walks into the pizza and says, why is your accessibility button up 3 steps? And I'm hoping that that's okay, and that that's okay that if that's the only seed that I implant, that's a good thing.
It's great. I'm wondering if anyone's ever been asked a question, in particular the people who don't have disabilities on the panel, and you weren't sure how to answer it kind of in that vein that because you don't have a disability, you kind of feel like you have to qualify your answer. Anyone?
Well, if ever I'm asked a question, I make it really clear, whether if I've been wearing my T-shirt, if I've been here, if I've been out with my daughter, wherever. I make it really clear that I'm not an authority on this topic of disability, that I don't know everything, that I am an advocate for my daughter, and I've had a lot of experience that I think, a lot of lived experience, good and bad, that I think we can learn from. And I try to make it clear that I make mistakes too. Just a couple weeks ago, going back to the language, the question about language, the discussion about language, I used the wrong word. I used the word deaf for someone who actually wasn't deaf, someone who was in fact hearing impaired. And the person, another staff member, corrected me, which I was really grateful for. And then that led to me, I went online, I looked up the correct terms. It was a real learning experience for me. And I was in the conversation. I didn't know what word to use. The word just came out, and I made a mistake, and we got over it, and it was good. But I think it's really important. I'm not an authority on it, but I do have experience that we can learn from, and I make mistakes, and I'm going to make mistakes. Like, this is like a huge. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot to know. We're never going to know everything, and even with, I say the wrong things about Abby all the time, so I make mistakes there too. So I think that's really, really important. We're human, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. I think we should open it up to the audience now, because I'm just looking at the time and I want to make sure that any staff who had questions are able to ask them. Did anyone have a question?
I'm wondering, actually, Louise, when someone does say something that might be so egregious, like using the word retarded, how might you redirect them with kindness so that they can learn from their mistake or faux pas? Because I would imagine if they realize, they might be horrified, but how can you help move the process forward so they can be more enlightened?
What do people on the panel think?
I think when somebody says something, it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding. And I think all you can do is to clarify it, to not correct in a condescending way, but to explain the situation as it stands. And we are not experts, and we are learning as we go along. So every time we stumble, we pick ourselves up and we try to find out more. So you do want to keep planting those seeds. So just by explaining in a nice way not so much what was offensive, but not like, oh, we don't call them that, we say this instead. Because maybe what you're saying, this instead, may not actually be the right terminology as well. You don't really know. We're not really experts, and it is a totally evolving thing. And with every time we look at a disability, we realize that we're still learning how to adapt our world to not accommodate, but to include.
Did anyone else have a question?
So the panelists are all wearing the Dear Everybody shirts, and my question for you is, did you select this shirt with the message you're wearing, and if so, why?
I selected mine for the color. Okay. I wanted navy. And I like all of the messages, so I was not biased with my message.
I picked mine also for the color, but also for the message. I've played sports my entire life, and so for me, it was meaningful.
It was given to me.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for sharing your stories and your advice. I'm thinking about, we've talked about looking outwards, but also looking in to Holland Bloorview and even within ourselves. And I'm just thinking that often, and this may be more for parents to answer, that the first time they might find out that their child has been labeled with an impairment or disability is very early in their lives. And so what recommendations would you have for the parents when they're first coming to somewhere like Bloorview or to Sick Kids or wherever? How should clinicians and healthcare providers be talking about disability and introducing that idea, keeping in mind the idea of stigma and how a label can be stigmatizing? So I guess, what advice do you have for healthcare providers speaking when parents and children themselves are learning that they've been labeled with an impairment or a disability?
I think that everybody's different, and I think that it's about building a relationship with the people that are coming in and sort of meeting everybody where they're at. And I don't know that everybody will be at the same place when they arrive here, because we all I've had a different path with my daughter than I know other parents have, and we've been here for a long time, and we still don't have, a diagnosis, but we kind of know what's going on, whereas other people have a diagnosis and have a lot of information. So I think it's about really establishing that connection at the beginning, and then, as I said, kind of letting the family help you understand what they need from you, and to just let them guide you a little bit at the beginning, build that relationship a little bit.
We got our diagnosis very early in Matthew's life. He's 4 weeks old. We were told to go away and enjoy our child. The time wasn't yet to start the therapy, all of those things. So it gave us time to accept him and to accept the changes in our lives. They were very cognitive of the fact that it was going to be a difficult journey for us. And they said to us, take care of yourself, take care of your family. Try to accept yourself first, because you need the time to digest. And that helped us a lot, because it was, we already had a child, and she was that perfect child who slept through the night at 6 weeks. And then we had Matthew, and it was completely different, as all different children are different. But to give us the time, and then they were very patient to help to guide. So what I would suggest is that patience is the most important thing, and don't barrage families with so much clinical and so much, you have to do this, and we have this and this and this, but give them the options. We have this kind of clinic. Maybe you'd like to think about it if you want more explanation about it. We have this program. Maybe you'd like to get your child involved in some sort of exercise program, or a math, like some sort of thing that will help their cognitive to build the skills. Give them the resources to let them look into the different things that they can experience to help build and to grow.
I actually have a little bit more to add. I'm not a parent, by the way, but kind of growing up as a kid and being kind of the only one in my family with a disability, and being the firstborn, my parents were a little bit nervous. Like they just, this is something very new to them, so they were always kind of like trying to find questions and get answers, and there were always something that's a little bit more apprehensive for me doing certain activities. But then kind of like as I getting actually to do the youth feedback corner against me, kind of a lot of kind of families and kids with disabilities and parents and individual and kids who've got an acquired injury, and then talking with the parents, it's like you can kind of see a little bit, they're like, it's like, what do I do now? Like, it's going to be different now. And kind of the thing that I often would tell them, it's like, it's okay, like, don't worry, like, don't sweat it. Yeah, every kid's going to go through their challenge. Your child's going to have challenges. You're going to have your challenges as well. But this is like with every kid. And I think it's important for them to kind of just listen to what their kid has to say, to listen to what their goals and their dreams are, and to do whatever they can to support them to achieve those dreams and goals. Yeah, granted, they're not all their dreams or goals aren't going to be, they're not going to be able to achieve all of them, but they'll be able to achieve some of them, and it's important to try and help them achieve those dreams that they want, and to just listen to them, and to understand that, okay, like, nothing in the world is perfect, and to accept that and move on, and to not dwell so much on the past or on the ways kind of you wish things could be, like, because wishing really isn't going to really isn't going to achieve anything.
Before we wrap up? Nope. Okay. Well, on behalf of the Dear Everybody team, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists, Chantal, Carolyn, Beth, Matthias, and Joanne. And I think we maybe have a small gift for our panelists. And I also really want to thank all of the staff who came out today. Thank you very much.
And I just want to say thank you as well to Louise for facilitating this amazing discussion, and again reiterate our thanks to the panel for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your counsel. And I have to say I'm just really struck by kind of the humanity of the panel, like this kind of sense of forgiveness, the idea that we're not perfect and that there's ways that we can fall down but rise again and make a difference in ending disability stigma. So I want to thank all of you on the panel for that, and I want to thank the audience for being present in the conversation, for making the space and the time in your busy schedules to deepen your understanding of disability stigma. Thank you to all.